Hi everyone, Joellen here, and welcome to Washed in Watercolor. For today's watercolor tutorial and demonstration, I thought it would be fun to paint these colorful macaron French cookies. The background watercolor washes are wet into wet painting, and the form focuses on both lights and darks. I'll also add a lot of texture. I'll guide you through the whole process. If you enjoy my content, please remember to like and subscribe. Leave me a comment too. Thanks, and here we go. I'll begin with a basic drawing of the cookies. I'm simplifying the form. I think about 3 cookies stacked and forming one big long cylinder. I'll then break that down into smaller shapes. Here I'm using a 2B pencil, but if you're drawing this at home, I suggest you use a 2H pencil, which is a little lighter. I'm also using a gray kneaded eraser to make any corrections or lighten my lines. Okay, I think this is pretty good. I'll now use Pebeo Drawing Gum to mask out the perimeter of the cookies. I'm using a 1/4 inch angled brush to apply the masking or drawing gum. For me, I'm making this a little bit wider, and that will really free up my hand when it comes time to painting the background. If you're painting along and decide you're going to use a brush too to apply your masking, just make sure you treat it in a soapy solution. This prevents your drawing gum from sticking to the brush, but never use your good brush just in case. Okay, let me just get my palette out and some water, and here are my colors. We have Winsor Lemon, Cadmium Yellow, Quinacridone Gold, Yellow Ochre, Winsor Orange, Red Shade, Winsor Red, Quinacridone Magenta, Perylene Maroon, Winsor Violet, Ultramarine Blue, Winsor Blue Green Shade, Prussian Blue, Cobalt Turquoise, Sap Green, Perylene Green, Burnt Sienna, Sepia, and Neutral Tint. And I'll just put my paper on a little bit of a tilt. It's always good to have a piece of scrap paper to test out your colors. Here I'll grab some Winsor Orange, a little bit of Quinacridone Magenta, and a little bit of Winsor Red. And using clean water and a big brush, I'll wet my paper. I'm just having fun dropping in my colors and just going through picking different reds I put out and really letting the paint kind of move together and spread on its own. I'll use the same technique for painting the foreground. I'll wet my paper first and then pick up some of my colors. I want the bottom area to be just a little darker and for the light to carry up, almost touching the cookie. Then I'll add a soft cast shadow. Make sure your painting is completely dry. I'm pretty happy with my background, so I'll take off the masking next, and I'll use a rubber cement pickup or a rubber cement eraser to do this. If you don't have that tool, you can just use your finger and rub off the drawing gum. Using my Winsor orange with some quinacridone magenta, I will paint the top section of the cookie. I want to keep in mind that there is a dark side and there is a light side. And I just want to kind of rough this in so, I'll come back later on and paint it a little more. For the darker side of this cookie, I use some magenta mixed with a little bit of perylene green. I'll repeat this process with the bottom half of the cookie, keeping in mind a space for the filling. Since I already have these colors mixed up, I might as well paint the cookie on the left. I'll next move on to the yellow cookies, and I'll pick up a little bit of lemon yellow along with some cadmium yellow just to warm it up, and a little bit of Winsor orange. Before painting the yellow cookie on the far left, I'll just make sure everything is completely dry, and then I'll go and use the same colors and the same method for painting the other cookie. Okay, I'm going to get some color put in for that purple cookie, so I'll pick up some Winsor Violet along with a little bit of quinacridone magenta, and I'll just color in this cookie with a light purple wash. I'll darken the right side, and whatever I do for this top section, I'll repeat and do the same thing for the bottom section. Okay, let me just clean out my palette before moving on to our final cookie, the green one. Here I'm pulling in some sap green with a little bit of winter lemon, and to that some cobalt turquoise. I'm trying to find the perfect color or the perfect match. To the darker shadowed areas, I'll add touches of perylene green. Now I'll do the same thing for the bottom half. It's now time to paint the filling of the cookie, so I'll clean off my palette and mix something up in the orange family. And just like with the cookies, I'll think about having a lighter side and a darker side. Using some Winsor orange with a little bit of quinacridone magenta, I'll just darken the bottom part of this top cookie. With that same mixture, I'll darken the right-hand side of the top part. Using the same mixture, I'll just work on the other cookie of the same color on the left. Adding a little bit of lemon yellow along with some Winsor red to the mixture, I'll start to refine the yellow cookies. I add touches of Winsor violet to the shadowed areas. It's now time to add some texture to the cookies. I'll use a little bit of Winsor orange with some quinacridone magenta. And using the tip of my brush, I'll just start to dot in some of the little holes and crevices that I see in the cookie. Remember, you can always go darker. So if my initial pass gets a little bit too dark, I'll just use my paper towel just to dab up some of the color of value. I pick up a little bit of Perylene Maroon and I'll just add it to some of the darker areas on the right side. Let's just darken that lip right there. Not bad, it's starting to take a nice shape. I use my 1/4" Princeton flat brush to lift up any lighter areas. I'll just repeat the method of adding textures to the other cookies. I feel I could use some darker values, especially in this middle cookie. I really want to look over my painting and see if I have my darks dark enough, even though they're subtle, and my lights light enough. So I'll make little adjustments here and there. Finally, I add a very dark and fine line under the cookies to really ground them. I think I'll title this painting either delicious or yummy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my video and maybe painted along. Thank you so much for watching and happy painting. Have a great day.